Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there tonight, and more importantly, staying safe as Tropical Storm Debby continues to spin around out here in Georgia and South Carolina, but bringing widespread impacts across Georgia and the Carolinas this evening, and has been all day today, and will continue over the next couple of days, Wednesday, Thursday, even a little bit into a Friday. I still think Thursday could potentially be the worst day, and that's still, a day and a half out ahead of us. So it's pretty wild to think that we're going to be dealing with this pretty much the rest of the work week. So I'm going to talk about why in this video I think Thursday will pack the biggest punch with Tropical Storm Debby. But of course, we're going to cruise through this video, give you a lot of information, talk about the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. We'll go over some model guidance, but I'm going to tell you, we're really only going to focus in on the European model. We'll take a little bit of a look at the HRRR model, which is a short-range model, but really just going to zoom into the European, not going to look at the Icon or the GFS or anything like that. I think we just need to stick with one model, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And then we're going to talk about impacts. We're going to get very, very detailed on that. We're going to compare model guidance with that information and try to get you guys the best idea of what's going to happen the rest of the way with this tropical storm. We're going to talk about the potential of it strengthening into a stronger tropical storm. Is it going to try to make it back to hurricane status? Confidence has really decreased on that, but this definitely could bump up to a moderate to strong tropical storm, 60, maybe 60 mile per hour tropical storm before making a secondary landfall into the South Carolina coastline. And then, that's pretty much going to be the gist of this video. At the very end, we will speak on how it is going to continue to be active the rest of the month. We're going to take a look at the Climate Prediction Center as far as the tropics and discuss some things there. Not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we certainly will spend a little bit of time on it. And then at the very end of the video, if you want to, stay tuned. I'm going to just speak to you guys at a personal level, just share some things with you guys. So if you definitely want to tune into that, just stay tuned to the very end. I'll probably even have a little bit of a timestamp up for that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. Timestamps will be up throughout the entire video for you folks just to jump to certain sections of the video that you'll want to watch. So let's get rocking and rolling here. So Tropical Storm Debby right here on your screen. We're just going to look at radar, not satellite. Just look at the radar and see what's going on. And there's a big shield of rain right over central South Carolina, which is exactly where I live. I live in Lexington, South Carolina, right outside of Columbia, if you're not familiar with the towns and cities in the state of South Carolina. And we actually have a flash flood warning right now. I'm safe. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. But it is raining at a pretty steady clip at my house right now. We got gusty winds. But we got rain continuing to wrap back around to southeast Georgia. It's raining pretty good in Augusta. We're getting, I would say the actual center of this low pressure is literally right over Savannah right now. The center of this system is like right here. So it's just now getting off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina, where it will try to meander out here and then eventually make some sort of secondary landfall, probably into here somewhere. Into the wee hours of the morning Thursday, maybe as early as Wednesday night, tomorrow night. We just got to watch the timing of that. But this is the system. We got feeder bands all the way into southeast North Carolina. There's an ongoing tornado threat this evening in southeast North Carolina, right in this region, even into the Grand Strand. We just got to watch all these feeder bands that continue to feed into this region. This is outer bands. You can call it feeder bands. Bands of this tropical storm, whatever you want to call it. But this is always the area you got to watch. We always have to watch, okay? We always have to watch the northeast to east quadrant of this system, which center of low pressure right here, and that would make this the east to northeast quadrant of this system. We call this the dirty side of the storm, where the best kinematics are located matched with that moisture at the surface. But this thing is certainly spinning around, just like I said, more of a solid rainfall with some gusty winds ongoing right now in the Midlands of South Carolina, southeast Georgia, even getting a little bit into North Carolina. So this is what's going on right now. Areas like Charleston's already picked up a foot of rain. We've gotten a little bit of a break, actually, in the eastern sections of South Carolina. I know that's probably got some people thinking, well, this isn't going to be as bad as what they thought. But folks, just be grateful there is a break, but just know that we're not done. I'll leave it at that. I'll fill you in with the rest as we get deeper into this video. All right, so right now, per the 5 p.m. update, this is a 999 millibar low, moving at a whopping 3 miles per hour right now. So very slow. It's a 40 mile per hour tropical storm. pretty much going as what we expected with this, moving east-northeast at that 3 miles per hour. So it is crawling. I mean, quite literally, you can crawl faster than Debby is going right now. So a zoomed in look at this cone. I would say this is more so right here and not right here. But anyways, I mean, you get the idea. So we get into tonight, 2 a.m. This could already begin to strengthen sometime tonight. It's saying it might bump up to a 40 to 45 mile per hour tropical storm sometime tonight. Okay, by the time we get into 2 p.m. Wednesday, this is back up to a 50 mile per hour tropical storm tomorrow afternoon. And then potentially can make landfall now, right after midnight, somewhere between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, right here in this region right here. It's where the center of this system will go. That doesn't mean that's going to be only where the impacts are. As you know, Columbia, I mean, up to Florence, Wilmington, seeing rain, plenty of rain right now. I think most of you know you don't have to be right there in the center of the storm to see the impacts from this. That's just the core of the system is right around the actual center of low pressure. That's where you're going to see the strongest winds with the tropical system. But now, you know, the time frame of this making landfall has moved up to like just after midnight tomorrow night. They were thinking, you know, maybe early to mid-morning Thursday, now more so just after midnight. So the timeline has sped up. Now, I've mentioned this a couple times. The Gulf Stream is out here, guys. Okay, this is where you have temperatures in Fahrenheit probably in like the mid-80s. Closer to the coastline, right in here, temperatures more so in the low 80s. I actually checked some buoys out here off the coast of South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina. And sea surface temperatures on average were around anywhere from 81 to 83 degrees. There's not many buoys out here that I could find, but temperatures, I saw 1 or 2 were actually in the mid-80s. So that few degrees makes a big difference. And we're starting to think that the center of Debby is not going to make it out there to the really warm waters of the Gulf Stream, which is good news because it's not going to have an opportunity to really re-intensify. It's only going to creep just off the coastline right here, more than likely. Now, we don't know this for 100% sure, but that's what model guidance is really pointing to right now. Okay, so we keep this going. Landfall sometime after midnight tonight. I'm sorry, tomorrow night. Still a 50 mile per hour tropical storm. Thursday afternoon, right over the PED, going right over Florence. Weakens into a depression in North Carolina late Thursday night. And then we head on up here to Virginia. This starts to develop and lose it. It starts to lose its tropical characteristics, so it becomes post-tropical. Gets a lot of dry air mixed in and loses that very warm, moist tropical air that these systems need to really thrive. And then this really starts to pick up some forward motion. So from 2 p.m. Friday to 2 p.m. Saturday, I mean, it books it. I mean, it covers a lot of real estate here. And, you know, at this point, it's going to be moving so fast. It is going to bring some showers and storms throughout New England and the interior Northeast, all the way up into like Quebec. And yeah, all the way up into Canada. But it's going to be moving so fast. I don't think it's going to do too much damage or anything like that, pack too much of a punch. But, of course, we are going to cover you guys in this video also. So you continue to move forward. Here's that classic look from the National Hurricane Center you folks are probably more used to seeing. Of course, all the S's jumbled up down here. The S goes to a D. That means it downgrades from a tropical storm to a tropical depression. And you can see how it picks up that massive forward speed right into here. So that's the latest advisory from 5 p.m. Now we're going to focus specifically on the European model. All right, this is the one from this afternoon. I decided to go on and get this video out here. Not going to wait another 2 hours for the 18Z Euro. This is the latest one that we have, which dropped a few hours back. So it's initializing this as about 2 millibars stronger than what it really is, but I mean it's got the right idea. As we continue to move into Wednesday morning, this is off the coast of the southeast. I would say the Euro still has us a little bit further off the coast of the southeast than the actual center of the National Hurricane Center cone does. But I've mentioned this to my friends, to my family, to people online today on social media, which, by the way, hit me up on Twitter, Facebook. That's a great way to stay up to date on the hour. Pretty much every hour I got you covered there. But anyways, I've mentioned how Wednesday was going to be a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a dead period, but a little bit of a lull. You were most certainly going to still get gusty showers and storms, even a tornado threat into the Carolina coastline, even back to Georgia. But I do think Wednesday is kind of the middle ground day. And that might throw some people in a loop, thinking that this is over. But I do think as we're getting into after lunchtime, we're getting into Wednesday evening, things begin to pick up a lot again as this low right here, which by the way has deepening all the way to around, so I would say around the low 990s, which would make this about a moderate tropical storm, starts to bring the core of this storm on shore. So you notice a little bit earlier in the day, this is tomorrow morning, the core of this system's on off the coastline. You're getting, these greens right here. This is probably in the form of just some outer bands. But then the core of the system, that low, begins to get pushed back into the South Carolina coastline tomorrow night, makes a landfall sometime after midnight. And this is what I'm concerned with. And I'm going to take a closer look at this here in a minute. There's going to be a timestamp called, basically a zoomed in look at the model, something like that. But this is what I'm concerned with. Makes landfall as a 990 millibar low after midnight tomorrow night. And then you see this intense coloring right here, yellow, orange, red. This is extremely heavy rainfall mixed with a lot of strong winds mixing down to the surface. So I know a lot of people in South Carolina specifically start school tomorrow. My daughters do, and they're looking forward to it. But I think there's a chance that what's going to happen is they're going to let these kids go to school tomorrow, and then they're going to set the stage for e-learning days probably the rest of the week, at least for Thursday. I think Thursday you're going to get widespread school and work cancellations further inland. Of course, we're already dealing with that in the coastal regions of the Carolinas. I think that's going to be more so the case Thursday further inland. And this is why that low finally pushes back in. And you see these areas in like I said, yellows, orange, reds. That's very heavy rain, and that is embedded wind gusts of 35, 45, 50 miles per hour. You combine that, and this is getting into Thursday evening, combined with an already saturated ground, okay, it's not going to take 80 mile per hour wind gusts to blow some trees over, especially with shallow roots. All right, so trees are going to have an opportunity to fall on power lines. So Thursday, I think, is going to be probably the final day, but the day that packs the biggest punch in my opinion. The core of the system, you got a 995 millibar low riding, just north of Chesterfield, South Carolina. Yeah, I threw my folks in Chesterfield a bone there. This starts to get into the Piedmont, and look at this big slug of moisture. These are the little mesoscale features you got to watch. That gets thrown into Southwest VA, the Piedmont Triad of North Carolina. Gusty winds late to Thursday night into Friday morning throws a huge slug of moisture up into West Virginia. And we're going and just move up to the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast now. This is something you watch in West Virginia, a state I haven't really mentioned at all with covering this system. But you continue, if this is something that happens, you're going to get a huge area of heavy rain that surges out of West Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic into PA, into the southern tier of New York. You could even have a little bit of a tornado risk Friday afternoon across areas of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast because you're on the east side of this low. This slings a bunch of moisture up into New York. The good news is it rides in, it rides out, but of course associated with this low and this jet streak associated with this trough that's digging down at the same time, it's going to bring a very quick period. I'm not talking about like an hour, but it's going to be quite literally maybe like a half a day to a 3/4 of a day period of just some strong winds, gusty winds, and just some on and off heavy rain. And then finally, by the time we get into Saturday afternoon, we are done with Debby in the lower 48. And that's all she wrote. Finally, Debby is done. But we got several days out ahead of us to deal with. We look at the European ensemble in the more zoomed in look here, just specifically talking about my folks in the Carolinas. There's where this thing gets out off the coast of the South Carolina. We're getting in tomorrow midday. Look how all these members dramatically turn. Every single member except 2 goes right back into the South Carolina coastline. You got some a little bit closer down here to Charleston and some grouping around Myrtle Beach. But the consensus is that this is going to happen probably somewhere in between. And that's why the center of the cone goes right in between all these members, which is, pretty much right into here. Okay? But you got a spread that goes like this. So the thing is if some of these members like in Charleston kind of end up happening, then of course this is going to inch a little bit further inland. That would affect areas a little bit further back to the west. This way, still affect these areas, but of course this is going to bring heavier impacts like Myrtle Beach. There's going to be some sort of segment with this storm when it comes inland that's going to bring those 50 to 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts. Not sustained necessarily, but certainly hefty wind gusts. We just got to figure out where. That's why I'm worried about Thursday. And we're getting into Friday evening. The core of this system, some members are going back over the Midlands. The core of them are going over the PD into the Sandhills, into the central sections of the Carolinas. And then they head on up to VA. And just a bigger look at this. Look at how all these members go over Virginia. A couple stragglers go over West Virginia. A couple go over the Delmarva. But most of them go right over the Mid-Atlantic and just cruise right over the Northeast throughout the ending of the work week into the early portion of the weekend. Okay? So, we continue to move forward. A closer look at the Euro here. And I'm going to show you the band that I'm worried about. And yes, my folks in North Carolina screaming at me right now like, Mitch, you got to show us too. I got you covered. I got you covered. The low comes in. Come on, get in motion. Pivotal weather can act a little finicky, guys. You got to talk to it sweet sometimes for it to get going. But the low makes landfall. Like I said, here's the time frame in Eastern time. 2 a.m., August 8th, Thursday. So it's right after midnight tomorrow night. Here it is. Latest Euro makes landfall north of Charleston, between like around Georgetown, makes landfall. And you see this banding feature right here over Florence, just east of Columbia, all the way down to Orangeburg, Sumter. That is a feature, whoever gets hit by this and is affected by this the longest. This little feature right here, even up here in the Fayetteville, this is where you can have very heavy rain, pick up 1-2 inch per hour rates easily, and then gusty 35, 45, 50 mile per hour winds. This is at 5 a.m. Thursday, for example. You continue to keep this going. This gets pushed into Columbia pretty much as the sun's just starting to come up Thursday morning. Okay, this is why I think schools will get canceled. And then this low continues to push this sort of west quadrant band here. And there's a tight gradient that's actually going to probably increase almost down-sloping winds, because remember, the winds are circulating around this low like this. So the winds are going to be screeching down from the north and northeast over the Midlands, and then more so out the east over sections of Charlotte up here to Fayetteville. So winds are going to be howling Thursday morning in like the Midlands, out kind of the northeast. And you got to watch this banding feature. How close does this get? How far back west does this get? This could cause power outages throughout all the PD of South Carolina down over to the Midlands. Can cause issues. It really could. You continue to move this forward. Look at that band over areas of the northern Midlands. And then the center of that low will have some gusty winds too. And then finally, by the time we get into Thursday PM, we could still, be dealing with something. But I really think as we're getting into like late Thursday night into Friday morning, we're done pretty much in South Carolina with it. A Friday would be much better. I think Thursday's the last day, but it packs one heck of a punch in South Carolina. We go a little bit on up the road to my fine folks here in North Carolina and Virginia. We'll start this out 5 a.m. Thursday. Like I said, look, if you kind of back this up previously, like this is Wednesday, this is tomorrow afternoon around this time. I mean, we got some banding on going all the way up to Virginia, but there's not a whole lot. You're going to think, there's a lot of people who do not stay up to date with the weather that's going to think tomorrow, I can without it, 100% believe this, that they're going to think that they're going to look around and say, well, that was it? I'm telling you, Wednesday, I've said it for the last few days, it's going to be kind of a lull. I still think there'll be impacts ongoing. I think it'll be a little bit of a lull, a little bit of a break. And then we get into Wednesday night, we get into Thursday morning, and here it comes again. Greensboro, Charlotte, Raleigh, Fayetteville getting slammed on the northern edge of this low, and then it's heading right towards this area. Kind of an area that has not been spoke on much is Charlotte to Greensboro, back to Hickory, the triad, the triangle of North Carolina. This is Thursday afternoon. Strong gusty winds, heavy rain, power outages, road closures, flash flooding. It's going to be a thing Thursday. I think they absolutely should close school for one day, close some businesses, do what you got to do across North Carolina Thursday, because you're going to have a tropical storm pretty much moving right through the Carolinas Thursday PM. And guys, look at Danville. Look at Roanoke, up to Harrisburg. We got to watch this. If the Euro is right, this is going to pack one heck of a punch for Western VA. And then eventually Thursday night and Friday morning, we get, an area of gusty winds and heavy tropical rains up into West Virginia, if this is correct. Now, I want to reiterate this, guys. If this low right here that you see, if this ends up being over here instead, then of course all this stuff right here, okay, will shift more so over here, and there'll be a tight cutoff from hardly nothing over here to a lot going on over here. So that's why it's important to stay up to date. Okay, the low could be over here. Heck, it could be over here. All right, right now, Euro's saying right here, kind of between Charlotte and Fayetteville. Wherever the low kind of slides, that's where the shield of that intense rain and wind will be. Okay, now if you keep this going, of course, this continues to head on up north, and we've kind of already showed you the northeast. Now, what about the HRR model, a short-range model? What does it show? Well, we'll start off tomorrow morning. As you can tell, tomorrow morning, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on. It could be wrong, but most model guidance shows this. So we're waking up tomorrow morning, you might not be having anything falling from the sky in Columbia, Charlotte, Greensboro, Augusta, Aiken, Orangeburg. You've been getting breaks today in Myrtle Beach. The sun came out in Myrtle Beach earlier today, if it's not still out now. So watch how kind of this changes. Now, the center of the storm on the HRRR model, kind of mid to late morning tomorrow, is kind of like right into here. Okay, watch how the radar begins to fill in when this thing begins to strengthen. So I really don't think the core of the storm is going to get back together, and I ultimately think that's why it's not going to try to make a run at hurricane status. But as we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, you start to get this intense rain shield that begins to pivot back over eastern North Carolina, back into the PD of South Carolina. This is when your rainfall tomorrow after lunchtime, tomorrow evening, is going to really start to add up in eastern North Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. So if you're wondering between now and then in North Carolina why these 10 to 15 inch rainfall totals aren't really materializing, just wait a little bit longer, and there probably are. But you continue to get overnight, this makes some sort of landfall. Whoever gets hit by this band is going to see the worst impacts. This is hitting Raleigh, down to Chesterfield, Sherrall, all the way down to Florence, Fayetteville, I think I've already said that. And then this band gets all the way back to Charlotte, gets all the way back to Columbia. Okay, Columbia is getting the tail end of this as you're waking up Thursday morning. Charlotte getting intense banding. I'm telling you and guys, the European shows this too. Wherever this band shows up here, that's where your most intense conditions are going to be Thursday. Now, there's a chance that I'm hyping up this band and there's not much going on up under it. There's not much under the hood. But from my experience, I think we're going to have some very strong winds, very heavy rain. It's just wherever this band sets up. It oozes all the way down to Columbia Thursday morning. It's affecting Charlotte almost all the way back to the Greenville-Spartanburg area. And this pivots over the area all afternoon. And this is as far out as the run goes. So you notice a huge break in the central sections of the Carolinas. And then it gets pretty wild again Thursday. Okay? I wouldn't be surprised if we don't pick up much rain at all. Like, for example, in my neck of the woods in Columbia tomorrow. And I've told people that. I was like, don't let your guard get down if we don't get much rain tomorrow. Now, this is additional rainfall between, let's see if I got the latest. Well, yep, awesome. Got the latest information. So this is the additional rainfall expected to come on top of what's already fell. For example, Myrtle Beach, there might be another 10 inches of rain that falls. Fayetteville, same thing. Wilmington, 10 to 11. Up to Raleigh, another 8 to 9 inches of rain. They've bumped it up in Charlotte. Charlotte might get now 6 to 7 inches of rain. Greensboro, over half a foot. Columbia, half a foot of rain could be on the way still. But look at this gradient, guys. And I'm telling you, it's why you got to stay tuned for updates. Look at that tight cutoff. This could shift. This could shift over here. It could. It just depends on where that low comes in. Does it kind of go over here? Does it go more so over here? What's it going to do? It'll make a drastic difference on where that band sets up. It's kind of like trying to figure out where a deformation band is when it's snowing. Who's going to see the heaviest snowfall amounts? But this is how much rain's expected. Look at this blob right in here. Significant rain. Now, if you're talking about winds from the National Weather Service, from the experts, let's see if we got a new one. Nope, it hasn't finished running yet. Always like to see if we have new runs. Obviously, the core of this storm, this only goes out to Thursday evening, by the way, it's like in the Murrells Inlet area, just south of Myrtle Beach, around Georgetown. If wherever the core of the system goes and the actual core around it, that's where you're going to get, you're seeing these reds, that's where you can get 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts potential. But I do think you're going to get stronger wind gusts outside this area. And I mean, you see it only says like 25, 30 miles per hour in Columbia up to Charlotte, Fayetteville, Raleigh, Greensboro. There's a potential for a lot stronger wind gusts than this. I'm going to show you what I mean here in a second. And here it is, a second later. If the European is correct, there's a potential for widespread 30 to 40, maybe 50 mile per hour wind gusts throughout all the Carolinas, central and eastern especially, all the way up into Virginia. And I know you're thinking, well, that's not a lot. Well, when your soil is saturated, you get a little 40, 45 mile per hour wind gust that can knock over a weak limb, a weaker tree, on a power line, and then bang, you're out of power. And you never know how long you're going to be out of power. I think everybody knows that. You just never know. One tree limb could hit a power line wrong, and then bang, the storm is all of a sudden memorable for you because you lost power for 8 to 10 hours. It makes that big of a difference. I'm fortunate enough, and knock on wood, right, that I don't hardly ever lose power in storms. And if I do, it doesn't last long. And when it does, it stinks because we use box fans and stuff in our rooms, so it's not so much worrying about food going spoiled. Believe it or not, it's the fact that we have to sleep in dead silence that kills us. But I laugh it off. I mean, that's the least of our worries. Of course, I'm not going to complain about something insignificant, so insignificant, but I don't know about you guys, but it is very difficult for me to sleep in dead silence. Now, a worst case scenario, and I've mentioned this many times with covering severe weather, is something like what the HRRR model is showing as far as these winds. And this banding feature, it wants to show 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts from Columbia up to Charlotte, over to Fayetteville, down to Florence, down to Orangeburg with this band. Is that going to happen? I think this is overdone. But I do think there's a chance that a lot of people are underdoing the winds for Thursday because of a tight gradient on the west side of the system. I really do. And we just got to see what happens. We just do. So now if we're kind of speaking, and I should have had this pulled up earlier in a video, but talking about the excessive rainfall outlook, folks, there's a high risk of flash flooding between now and the next 3 days from Columbia down to Orangeburg, down to Charleston still, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, up to Raleigh, Fayetteville. This means there's a 4 out of 4 chance out of the category risk thing, okay? Getting a little mixed up there, but there's a high risk. That means there's a 70% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. And there's a moderate risk up here in the red, which means if you live in the red area, 40% chance of that same thing. So, yeah, guys, and we're talking about storm surge. 2 to 4 feet from Murrells Inlet about to Cape Fear, Myrtle Beach, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. The storm surge will be the worst right as the core of this system makes landfall. We just got to figure out the timing and how strong the system's going to be. Now, if we're talking about the tornado threat, yeah, there will be a tornado threat. Tomorrow, there's a marginal risk. This could uptrend to a slight risk, but I don't think tomorrow's tornado threat will potentially be as bad as today's and the day before, yesterday. But where there is that dark green, this includes Charleston to Myrtle Beach to Wilmington to the southern flank of the Outer Banks. There's a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. And of course, for day 3, I have to go a little bit up the board a little bit. There could be a higher tornado risk, I think, for, when is this? This is Thursday, along the eastern sections of North Carolina and Southeast VA, as the center of this low basically starts to move. Ooh, that is an ugly L. Oof. It starts to move inland. That means this entire area right here is on the east and northeast quadrant of this storm. So you're going to have these feeder bands working in once again, and this is probably going to create a higher tornado threat. I wouldn't be surprised if we bump up to a 5% risk in that area for Thursday. And, speaking a little bit heavier on this, here's the HRRR model. And, there's the center of that storm. And in this entire area right here, folks, this is where you have the dirty side of the system. This is where you have the best kinematics, and you got this low-level jet brought to you by Debby. And so you got winds screaming out the south from the southeast. This is fueling these feeder bands that are working through this area. This is fueling the tornado threat kinematic-wise and putting a lot of spin in these tropical banding features that are on the east side of this tropical system. You're not going to get a tornado threat on the west side because you got basically a low-level jet. Winds are surging out the north to the south, so you're not going to get a threat that way. But you know, we certainly just have to watch this, guys. The significant tornado parameter is not going to really show us the tail here because this is a tropical tornado threat. But, I mean, look, we're getting it tomorrow afternoon, and you do have the significant tornado parameter showing at 1s, 2s, and 3s, so we got to watch out for this. And ignore this down here. This is not correct. But, you know, we start to get into tomorrow night. The tornado threat could begin to increase to set the stage for a higher tornado threat for Thursday in the eastern sections of North Carolina. I do think so. Now on up the eastern seaboard, rainfall will add up. Some of this right here in this region is for what's going on right now with a severe weather episode and flooding threat ongoing right now in areas of the Northeast. But, you know, you look at rainfall in the mid-Atlantic up to New England between now and Sunday morning. Several inches of rain is possible. Just find where you are on the map. Definitely a lot of rain on the way. And, of course, you just going up a little bit further up the road here to New England. Just a washout. A very quick-hitting washout is on the way for the Northeast. Just 12 to 24 hours of rain and wind on the way for New England as we're getting into the later portion of this week into this weekend. And then winds, too. If the Euro is correct, we're going to have strong, gusty winds. 40, maybe 45, maybe 50 mile per hour gust possible. Just watch out for these inlet areas. The Tidewater area could get strong winds from this, a little bit of storm surge as the lowest, you know, moving inland. So this could definitely push some water up against these areas for sure. A little bit of storm surge up into these regions right here, the coastal areas. It's definitely possible with a low cruising probably this way. So, of course, you got the flow wrapping around the low. This will create some very gusty conditions along the coastal regions. It really wants to get very windy, like into the New York City area. And, of course, into the New England region, guys, we're going to have some gusty winds, too. I mean, it honestly shows a pretty significant amount of winds up into New England. So we don't want to just totally discredit that at all. But definitely be prepared for this. This is nothing you guys can certainly handle this up here. It's going to be a quick-hitting storm, but it's going to pack a punch. It's something we need to probably talk a little bit more in detail about probably in the next day or so for sure. So, guys, we're not going to slow down anytime soon, even though there's nothing too crazy showing up on the models right now. We got a few tropical waves we need to watch. But this is the Global Tropics Hazards Outlook. And typically they do not issue like a special edition like this where they zoom in to the Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, and Caribbean. But they have. And to me, that just screams to me that there's some pretty high confidence that's about to get pretty active. So the date valid between the 14th and the 20th in this kind of candy cane looking stripe area right here. This is where you have at least a 20% chance of tropical development occurring, a tropical cyclone occurring. And then you got this huge area around this darker shade of red, which means you have at least a 40% chance in the Southwest Atlantic, which, I mean, we know what comes next after this, right? I mean, land. All right. Of a 40% chance or higher of tropical cyclone development right here. And then it doesn't stop. From the 21st to the 27th, this entire, you know, striped area, candy cane looking area, 20% chance. And then you got to continue to watch out here in the main development region a little bit later in August. So I don't think we're slowing down, guys. I really don't. But just to kind of wrap up this video, folks, I just want to say thanks for the people who actually cared enough to wait to the very end of the video to hear this. But I just want to say thank you for the support to kickstart August. I kind of was mentioning it during the slow times. We had about 3.5 weeks in July where it was incredibly slow. I did my best to take advantage of those slower times and the weather, my weather life, and my personal life, which, you know, is all just my life. But I've mentioned before, I operate better, I guess you would say, under pressure when things are much more fast paced. But even someone that takes a sense of pride in handling a lot at one time can admit when things get a little bit crazy. And I feel almost somewhat overwhelmed right now by how active things are. If you don't know anything about me, and you haven't been watching my channel long, I do work a full-time job outside of the weather, 40-45 hours a week. And then when things are active like this in the weather, it feels like I work 2 full-time jobs. It really and truly does. I think on my average day-to-day life, I already work a full-time job, and I would consider this a part-time job. But like I said, when it's active like this, it feels like I'm working 2 full-time jobs. So if I do miss details in the comments and questions, as always, I do apologize. If I miss your messages on social media, miss your comments, it's not personal. So it's just difficult. It's difficult to allocate enough attention to everything sometimes. If I did this full time, could sit at a computer all day, answer all the questions, get very detailed on everything, it would be a game changer. But that's not God's plan right now. We got a lot of things to take care of before we make that change. And I think that's sometime maybe in the next 5 years. If it happens at all, guys, it might not happen. So, but thank you for the support to kickstart August. It's been incredible growth, been consistent growth. This storm has been a little bit personal to me because it's affecting my home state here in South Carolina. So I thought that I needed to go a little extra than I already do with this system. But thank you for the growth. Thank you for the people who gave this channel the time and day. A lot of people will probably jump on this channel and there's nothing flashy, so they jump right back off. There's nothing flashy with this channel. It's just a dude that's passionate about the weather just pulls up a crap ton of tabs on his computer and then starts yapping his jaw about the weather. So it's always going to be a personal touch with this channel, and I'm really speaking to the people who are first-time viewers. So just wanted to leave it at that. Thank you all for the support. Welcome to any new subscribers. And August is going to be an incredibly active month, guys. So just buckle up. And that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Continue to stay safe. And I'll have you another update in the morning. Talk to you soon.